Welcome back to the channel. So this time we've got a little bit of 3D printing. Creality have sent over their water washable resin, so I'm going to give that a go. I have been using the Anycubic water washable resin plus. So this is the Creality printer that was kindly gifted. So in this one we're just going to go through how I would start with some new resin and how I'd look to actually use some new resin. So I've actually got a few bits dried on in my vat there, which is a bit of a problem. So that's just from the cleanup from before. So I'm going to pour some of this in. We'll do a clean and then do a calibration test and then go on from there. So first off, the bottle is notable in it being metal. It's the same amount in the bottle. I did find the seal. There's like a plunge kind of sealed top to it. I find it very difficult to get out. There is a ring pull on there, but it just snaps. So very, very tight. The other thing is this resin is thicker. It's sort of viscosity. The way it works, it's a lot thicker and it runs off a lot slower. So you've just got to adjust your print settings for that. I'm not sure if it's currently available in this country, but it may be available in other countries. So it's one worth checking out. Now you'll see as we pour it in, it's quite a heavy, dense kind of liquid compared to the Anycubic, which I'm used to, which is much more watery. It's much more like I suppose if you used milk. The Anycubic is very much like semi-skimmed milk, comes out very watery, whereas this is more heavier, more like a kind of cream than a milk, if that makes sense. I don't know why we use milk as an analogy. I guess everyone knows what it's like. So there we are, it's in the vat. I'm just cleaning off. You can see again that plunge top is just a little bit tricky. There's a lot of takes a lot of pressure to get it on, a lot of pressure to get it off. But once it's in, like I said, usually you'd be ready to go now, right onto your calibration test. But because I saw there was a few bits stuck to the bottom of where this resin is, the resin bed is called a vat, is a film, and the resin can stick on there. We're just doing a clean now. I thought it was worth showing you that. So there's a function just on there. You just press cleaning, and you can set it for 10 seconds. Well, whatever amount of time you want. I find 10 seconds works quite well. And what that does is sets a screen of UV light across the base to set a very thin sheet of resin in there, which captures all the bits that are in there as well. It's a very useful way of doing it, because otherwise all the bits just splinter. You can't get them out easily. Now I found that hadn't set enough, so I'm moving it up now, and this is the same thing. So for the water washable resin, it cures faster. Because this is a thicker resin, it takes a little bit longer to cure, so therefore you've got to up your exposure time and up your cleaning time, which is what I've done there. If I'd actually left this for a moment, the edges would curl up, and then you can see where it is. You can see the principle here. Look, there's just a cured sheet of resin that you just lift up and get out. But you will now see, if any of you have ever done 3D printing, you'll be used to much thinner liquids than this. You'll see as I lift up the sheet of cured resin how thick and gloopy the actual Creality resin is. Now that might work in your favour for some types of print, and may work against you for other types of prints, because you might need a longer exposure time. I did find that we actually needed a longer exposure time here to get successful prints. And I have gotten through the bottles that were sent, and I'm back onto the Anycubic stuff now. And I think I prefer that, really. I didn't find the detail or the prints or anything like that were any different. I just found the workability for me in my situation, which is a little bit working on top of myself, having a heavy gloopy resin makes cleanup more difficult. It makes it easier to make a mess, So I don't find it is useful. So I actually prefer going back to the Anycubic stuff. Plus, I actually found it difficult to get hold of in the UK, the Creality stuff. And when I contacted them, that it was on their store, but that's in the Asian market, so that's no real good to me. So here we're just running a calibration test. I use the cones of calibration, and that is just it's a file you can print which has a load of bits and bobs all over it which fail and print in ways that you can then adjust the calibration, so the exposure time and all the rest of it. And then when it prints how it's meant to correctly print, you can tell that your settings are dialed in. So I run a few of those off. I found that it just needed a little bit more exposure time. I've also got the lift height at quite a slow speed. And I have now, in my current printing, I've upped that considerably because I was, again, getting issues with it being so slow. It was kind of pulling the printed parts were being pulled by the suction of the resin as the plate came up. It was sort of sucking them back off the plate. So I found actually having a faster lift speed, which a friend helped me with, gave me that advice. I was getting less failed print, so I upped the exposure and upped the speed of the lift time, and I was getting much better prints. You can see now the difficulty with this plunge top, and I'm using the plastic. Am I using it? I did use the plastic spatula on this, and I broke it, and I thought, for goodness sake. So the metal spatula is what worked. I don't like the way I was getting really fed up with the way the bottle was designed towards the end, I must admit, especially when you used to just, that Anycubic bottle to the right there, you just take the lid off, there's a hole, and you just pour it out. And it works fine. It doesn't leak, it doesn't smell, it's not a problem. So now we're setting up for printing. So what I'm actually printing in this video is some parts for a Hellcat and parts for a Spitfire in 1/48 scale, which are free STL files, which are available on the internet. And I've got the details down below in the description box. It looks like there's a few guys that are getting a load of free for use STL files and putting them up on this forum, and you can download them. So it's a great resource. Lots of detailed parts for the Edward kits. What I'm actually printing here is some stuff for like Warhammer, so extra parts for that. But at the end, what you will see is printed resin parts for scale models. And now you can see how slow my lift speed there is. I have upped that considerably now. I do find that when you compare this machine to almost any other 3D printing machine that is available and people are using, some of the terminology and some of the settings aren't quite the same. For instance, the lift speed is set to, I think it's set to millimeters per minute or something like that, which means you have to have a very low lift speed when you compare it to all the rest that are sort of set by second, like millimeters per second. It's something like that. It's the wrong way around. I haven't done it for a little bit, but so that was difficult because you'll find that a lot of the suggested settings relate to a measurement that your printer doesn't have. Your printer is sort of set to double or triple, so it's very strange. But it works. You put STL files in it, it prints out. It's absolutely fine. So there are a lot of nice features to it. To the right there, if you see those sort of corrugated lines, if you like, running up in that kind of rectangle that's sticking there, is a carbon filter, which has a draw fan going out the back through a pipe. That's excellent. I don't know that many 3D printers come with that as standard. And then to the left there, that is a resin pump. So there's a pipe on the back, and you can put your bottle at the back, put the tube into it, and this tap that's going into the reservoir there will pump the resin out into your bottle. So if you don't do that, you have to unscrew this vat and then tip it in through using a funnel, which is a nightmare, and every time I've done it I've made a hell of a mess. So functions like that are fantastic. Because of the settings which I was describing, whichever the measurement is for the lift speed, you can have phenomenal lift speeds as well. It can really go fast, really fast. So if you're printing something big and you don't worry so much about the detail, again, this will do it really quick compared to other printers. And I have found a lot of the stuff I've been printing, some people take 2 days. I can have it done in 5 hours. So that's a good part to this as well. I'm just focusing there. You can see here I'm printing some bases for one, and you can see it's 0.05 millimeter thickness, which is the layer height, and those bases are going to take 2 hours. And that's because I've got it on the slow setting. Like I said, going forward, I've actually raised considerably, so that would have come down to about 1.5 hours probably. And that's the difference. Obviously, if the lift height's quicker, it's doing the process faster, and on it goes. You can see here now, because of the thickness of the resin, this is where I was getting fails by having such a slow lift speed, because that suction is so strong, because it being so slow that it's just pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling the parts off of the build plate, which is the bit that goes up and down. That's what you want the resin to stick to. So you've got to, whenever you change resin, which is what this video is half about, you need to make sure you check all the settings and think about it logically, and look at the process and look what's happening. And I was surprised at just how differently the resin reacted. So as we go on with the print process, you can see now that we're not printing bases. This is footage I took over a number of different prints, and here you can see that we're starting to get some good success. Again, the thickness of this resin, you see there's a bead of resin running along the front end and the back end of the build plate and just sort of hanging there. That doesn't happen with the Anycubic stuff, it would run off. But you can see that the details are there. Everything's printed absolutely fine. I didn't get any issues relating to the resin. It's really just changing his settings. It worked really well. You can see they're still using the slow speed. And I guess if I talk about the slow speed, so if you've got a very thin resin, like the Anycubic stuff, having a slow speed can actually help you stop pulling the stuff off. But if you've got a very thick resin, you need a faster speed, and on it goes. So trial and error, a lot of this. 3D printing is good. My overview for 3D printing with scale modelling, after I've done it now for about 6 months, personally, for me, I don't feel like I need a 3D printer. I've tried printing tracks, I've tried printing parts for scale models. Personally, I feel like it may just be my printer, or it may just be the files, or it just might be the way I do stuff. I do find I want it to be perfect. I don't want any lines, I don't want any artifacts, nothing like that. And I find that extremely difficult to get out of a printer at home. Now, I do see people are doing it. I'm not saying you can't do it. But I must say, it seems that people are doing it with a printer that is not this one. So that's for a start. I'm not seeing anyone using this printer specifically for scale modelling. So now we've printed those parts just to carry along with the video, and now we're going to switch to Spitfire parts, and they're going to come off on the build plate. I've got myself all set up here. We're going to knock them off the build plate and put them in this water. This is like a what would you call it? This is like a bucket that you dip the resin off first in. This isn't how you wash it. This is how you kind of rinse the resin off, so your resin doesn't end up in your wash machine, because you want to keep that water clean, really, and you can really fill up the resin if you put that straight in your water washing station. Then a lot of the resin is now in the water, whereas if you do this, you've rinsed off more or less all the resin, and then your water washing machine, it's not a water, it is why am I calling it a water washing machine? The wash station will then wash your resin parts much more effectively. So yes, as far as printing, I think the main thing comes down to this. If you're into CAD design, you build 4 or 5 models a year, and they're absolutely the best you can do, and you want to put everything in them and into them, and you want to make them super accurate. 3D printing is going to be a real aid to you. So from the tracks, it's guys like Tankbrusher, Kai, who's making loads and loads and loads of very detailed parts for German tanks. There's guys putting up stuff on Colts for all kinds of different things. There's even like free, you can buy parts for you can download for free from Colts parts for a 1/48th prototype Spitfire. And I have printed some of these for my friend and we upscaled it to 1/32 to try and use it on the Qatari Spitfire. So that is the sort of things you can do. But to jump in and buy a 3D printer, for me, so from the tracks point of view, I think going forward, like I would, if I'm only going to sort of build 4 or 5 tanks a year, how many of them am I going to want to put resin tracks on? I'd rather use metal tracks, I've got to be honest, after using resin tracks as well, but that's just a personal choice. I'd probably only want to put it on 2 or 3. Well, I may as well just buy a set of tracks, aftermarket tracks, if I want to do it, and go from there. And I'm not worried about the super accuracy of the tracks or the road wheels or whatever, because again, with weathering, how much of it do I see at the end? I'm not so sure. When it comes to aircraft, well, I honestly think, although I've printed a load of parts here for this Spitfire, that is one of those prototype. That is the prototype bit that was on Colts that we upscaled there. That was the air intake, the radiator for under the wing. If you want to do an obscure project, then fine. But really, 3D printing in scale modelling it's linked to the CAD design. If you can design something in CAD, the world is open to you of 3D printing. If you can't do that and you're relying on what's out there, there's not a lot out there. 6 months of printing, you will have printed everything that's out there, and there's not a lot coming on top of it. Again, just an aside, as we're looking here, we're in the wash station, which is the Creality wash station. Excellent piece of kit. This, I would almost say it is. It'd be difficult to do this without this machine right here. I put a little bit of washing up liquid in the water, make it warm. Warm water cleans far better than anything else. Because these are small parts, I've got this little tray that we used at work for sieving out small seeds. I put all the bits in there. As long as the water's going around, you can see it's moving and bubbling and working. Leave that on for 15 minutes. There is about as clean as they're gonna be. If you need to go further from that, you can then put them in your sink. Obviously make sure the plug's in. A little bit of warm water, and then they can just sit there for a little bit, and that will get rid of the last of any of the resin. So yes, as I was saying, 3D printing for scale modelling. That is scale modelling. So that would be my overview of 3D printing for scale modelling. Really, you need to be able to design your own parts, unless something drastic happens and all of a sudden there's a ton of new parts are released. If you take that and move to wargaming, especially Warhammer and games like it, I don't know if you could do that easily without having a 3D printer. There is just so much available for wargaming, Warhammer specifically. So let's just say that it's not licensed by 40k by Games Workshop, but there is a huge amount of extra parts, different things that you can't buy. You know, people make shoulder pads for Space Marines that have got different logos on them and all that sort of thing. There is an endless amount there, and it is always being updated, and there's a whole load of companies that are producing proxy type models which are not licensed by Games Workshop but don't cover the license of Games Workshop, so they stand alone and they're making their own games, and you can sign up to Patreon and you get, I don't know, looks like 150 different figures a month that you can print. I mean, that is what at-home 3D printing is designed for. And I also have found you can up the settings and you don't seem to lose the detail, because the detail is finessed. It doesn't need to be, especially for tabletop wargaming. If that's what you want to do, you're not even worrying about it. So there's two different things there for this is my overview. I think we're a little way off from scale modelling. I know there are guys out there who do a lot of 3D printing. They're doing a fantastic models with it, but it does seem that an awful lot of them are also producing their own objects to print in CAD. That is a game changer. If you can do that, then 3D printing is the way forward, and you're going to be making models that are have got unique parts that others don't have. Here you're looking at, this is the best we could find. My friend Tim Scale Modelling, I actually printed these for him. He's got them, and he should be doing a video that incorporates these into a Hellcat build. So these are 3D printed parts that, again, he found on this website, and I printed out for him, and I'll put the link down below in the description where that was. This is the best we could find. Now, I haven't found, if there was a website that had this for 100 different aircraft, well then, we'd be laughing. But there just doesn't seem to be that amount out there. Of course, there is quite a lot that you can pay for, but again, it's quite limited. It's as much as people have done, and then it stops. And like I said, with the wargaming community, there seems to be this huge incentive for people to... It's almost going against Games Workshop, if that makes sense. So there's like this furore behind it that pushes it on further. Whereas with scale modelling, there's a lot of products out there for us that we can just buy. So there doesn't seem to be the incentive to or drive to go on and make a load of stuff. And I expect many people don't have the expertise to do it as well. I certainly don't. I can't design anything in CAD. I've never even looked at the program. And I imagine there's an awful lot of people that are like that too. So the Creality printer can print some fantastic stuff straight off, and I don't know anything about 3D printing, but you do need the files. So that's my view. Hope that's interesting. We'll have another video on this shortly.